Senator Romney. Senator Ossoff, you are recognized for your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, Secretary Mayorkas, want to thank you and your team for responding to the letter, the bipartisan letter that I sent with Senator Scott requesting reforms to FEMA disaster relief practices that were discriminatory against Black Americans, especially in the South. Grateful to you and your team for making those reforms. Would like to ask you, please, how would you characterize the specific mission of the Office of Intelligence and Analysis, and what differentiates it from the other 17 component agencies in the intelligence community?
So if I can, it dovetails with the question that Senator Romney asked. I think we're cooperating and are more cohesive now than we ever have been before. And I think that to the extent that we sometimes have redundancies, those are intentional redundancies for a belt and suspenders approach to our Homeland Security and our national security. The Office of Intelligence and Analysis is really an office of partnership. What it does is it gathers information and intelligence from across the threat landscape, and what it is uniquely situated to do is to push that information and intelligence out to our state, local, tribal, and territorial partners so that the first responder community is equipped and empowered to address the threat in its communities. One of the things that the Office of Intelligence and Analysis has become so much better at over the past 9 months is, in fact, working with the Federal Bureau of Investigation in the Joint Terrorist Task Force model, and we partner in the dissemination of information bulletins, conference calls, and the like with local law enforcement.
Thank you. Director Abizaid, how would you rate the quality of information sharing across the IC's 18 component agencies?
I actually think it's very strong, especially when you're talking about counterterrorism intelligence. I think the shift from in the post 9/11 environment was a shift to a need to share sort of mentality across the intelligence community, but also our state and local partners, our lead federal agencies in the Homeland, the FBI, and DHS as well. So I've been very impressed as I've come back in to lead the center with the degree of information sharing that happens across the intelligence community in classified channels. But I've also been very impressed by the degree to which we work to downgrade as much information as possible and engage directly with state, local, tribal, and territorial elements to make sure that we're getting the threat information to the right individuals so they're enabled to take action where they need to.
Thank you, Director Abizaid. Director Wray, we spoke March 2nd in the Judiciary Committee about the extent of violence in communities across the country, the alarming increase in violent crime, particularly from 2019 to 2020, also from 2020 until this year. City of Atlanta, 113 homicides this year. That's a 16% increase from last year, a 64% increase from 2019. Georgians are deeply concerned by the intensity of violence in our communities. When we spoke in March, you said you were going to work to refine your assessments of the factors driving this increase in violent crime and violence across the United States. What are your conclusions?
So I do think as much as it's a phenomenon in our home state of Georgia, it is also in other parts of the country as well. And while there might be variations from city to city, I think there's a number of factors that contribute to it. I think the impact of COVID cannot be underestimated, whether it's trial backlogs, early inmate releases, unemployment, et cetera. You have more juveniles committing violent crime. You have certain prosecution practices and decreased sentences, which put recidivists back out on the street more readily, and that adds to its challenge. You also have the prevalence of firearms, including interstate trafficking. By that I mean firearms in the hands of those who are legally prohibited from having them. So all those factors together create a combustible mix. I would add into that a number of police departments, our close partners that we work with every day, who have an incredibly challenging job, are experiencing recruiting challenges and attrition that is in early retirement, and that in turn adds to it. So you put no one factor by itself, but you put all those things together, and that's part of why you're seeing, I think, the increase in homicides. You're also seeing increases in carjackings and other violent crimes, not just in Atlanta, not just in Georgia, but in cities all over the country. And it's something that I suspect every member of this committee hears about from its constituents with increasing frequency for good reason.
Thank you, Director Wray. Mr. Secretary, a couple of questions related to congressional oversight of the department. I recognize you've got a tough job. You and I have spoken in public and in private about the importance of responsiveness to the Senate, to this committee, to the Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations, which I chair and for which Senator Johnson's the ranking member. But a number of requests that we sent to the department back in July, we still have not seen timely production of relevant documents and records. I want to ask why. I also want to state here publicly for the record while we've got you that regardless of the administration's party, the Senate has an obligation to conduct vigorous oversight and to be assertive in using our authorities and prerogatives to secure the information necessary to oversee the executive branch past and current activities. And in my capacity as chair of the Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations, I intend to be assertive in seeking that information. But could you comment, please, on why these requests, now 3 months outstanding, remain outstanding?
Forgive me, your concern is resonant. In fact, we've done an internal review of the pace of our responsiveness, and we've implemented new procedures to ensure a greater responsiveness. That is indeed an obligation of ours and a commitment of ours and a commitment of mine personally. I will say it is quite a daunting challenge. We have over 90 committees of jurisdiction. It is something about which I have spoken with this committee, both as the secretary and in my prior service as the deputy secretary. It is a daunting number of requests for information and requests for production of documents that we receive. Nevertheless, that is a commitment and an obligation of ours, and we'll do a better job of fulfilling it.
But where are those documents requested in July, Mr. Secretary?
I will have to look into that, Senator, and I will do so forthwith.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Ossoff. For the panel, you've been going a long time, and I know that a break is warranted, but